Hey guys, Guardian Matt here, and we're going to build some terrain, some ruined buildings for tabletop wargaming using this XPS foam from Home Depot that I have a couple different strips of different sizes for. We are going to want to cut these down. First, I start off by cutting the bigger piece in half just to give me a bit more of a variation in size. This wasn't cut to any certain length, just went in the middle. And then I also did it again just to get it a little bit more easier to cut later on with the hot wire cutter. From here, I did notice that even with cutting it down a little bit, it is a little bit too high. So I do need to make some small adjustments to it because it does barely touch the top of that. I ended up cutting it in half, and from here, I believe it was up to about 3 inches in height. I am cutting these in half down the middle as well to create essentially the one wall. This one wall is going to be 3x6, and it does get a little stuck on the jig there. And you can see that my wire's a little taut. I think I need to up the heat next time. But I'm creating this 3x6. I do this twice to give me a little bit of variation and options for which pieces I want to use for it, and that actual little hole that ended up getting there from the wire being stuck there for a little bit actually added a little bit of a nice effect to the one corner of it. From there, I also got a bit of a larger piece, the other side that wasn't fully cut down, just so I can have a longer side on one end, where if you've seen any of the Games Workshop stuff or other tabletop ones, one side's always a bit longer than the other. It's not usually the same. I cut this down to about 9 inches, 9x3, to mirror the other one by being a little bit longer, where the other one's 6x3, this one's going to be 9x3, and that's going to be stacked up. It's going to be 3 inches per level itself. Now that I have all these different variations cut, I also end up cutting the 9-inch one in half, just down the middle, just like the other one. I'm going to go through, find the different pieces I want, and start kind of planning out. Big old thumbs up right there to say next part. And we're actually going to put this on chipboard as the base. Now, chipboard is the back of a legal pad. This is actually pretty decent and strong. I've used it before and some other things. It does have some warping, but we're going to show a technique I just thought of how to get that, to get the warping from not happening. From here, I'm just going to do a quick dry fit of everything, for the first level, and just trace out how I want the actual base to be. This is just a quick rough base, not really any measurements for it. That doesn't really matter in my opinion. And I'm just going to take my little handy knife and just cut out that area that I drew real quick. Now the chipboard is a little thick, so I will have to go back over this afterwards. I didn't put that on the camera because I figured, hey, you got the idea. You don't really need to see me going through a couple times to make sure it goes all the way through. But don't get rid of the excess. We're going to keep that. We're going to here we have our cut out base, and of course here's our excess a little bit. We're going to use that for the second floor. We're going to clean up a little bit to make sure we don't have any extra overhangs or anything. I'm first going to take the pieces and add them together for both the heights. Make each side its full length, which should be 6 inches all the way to the top, 3 inches on each floor. Just so you have enough room for the models to go through. And that way you're not, getting the heads touching the top of it or getting anything stuck in there. I'm just going to add the longer end together, and then I'm also going to do the same for the smaller end. Smaller end, a couple different cuts. I like this one the best. Like I said, with those little variations of where the wire did get stuck, it adds like a little bit of a column effect to it, which is pretty nice. Just going to use some hot glue to get that all together. Get rid of any of the little wisps that may come out with it. Just make sure everything's all lined up for it. And again, just going to do a little bit of dry fitting. I believe the longer side did get a little bit higher than the other. But that's perfectly fine. I'm going to just make sure I have the correct length there, and then put a bead of hot glue down below first, just to get it all laid out and in place. Realistically, I probably should have put a line on the foam there as well, but I'm just going to go back after I have the the actual like wall up against it. That way I don't have to do any jimmy jacking, just to make sure that these two sides are fully connected. It is a little bit off on the connection between the two pieces of foam and the board itself, but that's not too bad. And obviously, big old thumbs up right there. Now that we have this set up, I want to get that second floor. We're going to use the offcut from that chipboard to get it all attached. Obviously cut the dimensions a little bit less than what's up top. You take these little offcuts from the previous cutting to make little thin strips, just to create essentially a brace, I guess, like a brace for me to put the second floor on. I'm just going to use, like I said, offcuts. Keep these always around. You can always use these for something. I definitely need to up my temperature on that, the temperature of the wire, because obviously it's getting a little taut. And then after we make the big like individual slabs, we're going to cut these into a bit more finer, like finer rectangles, just to make them a little bit smaller for it. And I'm not having giant slabs going down. I don't need that, but I'm going to make some extra ones just in case I want to use these for other things later on. I'm glad I did, because I did use some of them for other things. We'll get to that in a moment once I'm all done cutting these. I do make more than I need, but I'll save these around for other projects later on. Now we're going to just kind of like put these on the structure itself, just kind of getting a rough fit for it. And also just going to use some hot glue on it just to get these into a certain position. You don't need a whole lot of them. I actually use a couple on each side. Obviously there's a little, if you look, there's a little excess hot glue. Don't really want that there because it'll bubble out and get the other part caught. So I'm just use some off-cut chipboard just to scrape that away real quick. Always keep some extra, just disposable stuff handy, and just make sure it's back into place. Gonna put it right at where those two meet, right underneath the top one, just to make sure that seam is still there. That's going to be like where the main part of it goes. Now, I debate adding a second one on that side, but I didn't want to have to break it down anymore, so I just leave it with one on that side, and it seems to be perfectly fine at the end. I don't see any structural issues or anything like that. So I'm just going to leave that smaller side, just the one of those, and then I'm just going to bring these other ones just out to the edge, one at a time, hot glue. Don't want to bring the bead all the way down to get anything dry too quick. Do I think it would? Probably not, but it's, better safe than sorry kind of situation. Put the second one in here, and the third one will be going on last. And the third one's going to hang over a bit. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to cut it so it makes it look like it's a piece of stone that had been destroyed, and it's just hanging off the edge as if the building was a little bit more out more. And that's perfectly fine. It makes a nice effect to it. Now I'm going to take some of these other ones and add a little bit of a structure to it. Put little cross beams down below. I'm going to add one from the small one to the larger one as just a first part of stability, because it is going to hang out, and those other ones are great for against the walls, but with it hanging out more, we kind of need to build that up a little bit just to give it a little extra stability. Like I said, just a little hot glue here and there, just make sure everything sits well, and it doesn't have to be perfect. This part, since it's going to be underneath, not really many people are going to see, it can look a little weird. I do put a little piece underneath just to give it a little bit of stability upwards. I eventually will take that out because it does get in the way of it, but I'll do the same thing on this one, and this one's a little off-centered than the other one to make it look staggered, but I will keep that piece going up there for the stability. I'm going to take the hot glue and just put it a little bit everywhere for it. Doesn't matter if this goes over a bit, no one's going to really see it. Doesn't so it's okay if you put a little extra, and then just attach that one cut to that second floor. And now we have the second floor for the building all set up. Just make sure everything's all pressed in and not bumping up. Now from here, you've probably seen before and been screaming at me, hey, how are the guys supposed to shoot out? There are no windows here. And I thought about this a little bit ahead of time without cutting. We're going to take this little handy dandy foam cutting wand I have, and we're just going to do some rough cuts for some windows. Now, I'm going to fumble a little bit, move some stuff out the way because I don't want to get that hot glue gun in the way while I'm doing this, because this thing is really hot. I've actually burned myself a little bit by accident. We're going to do a quick rough cut here, and I try to do a kind of circular top window, and it looks like it's going all good, but the way that this wand is, it is a little bit more, it's definitely hotter, it's a little bit more unwieldy compared to the actual like cutting table, so it doesn't come out perfect. It actually comes out really, really janky. So I'm just going to make this look like it's a very destroyed, kind of blown in window itself, and kind of square it off so it goes with the motif of, hey, this is a destroyed building, but try to make it a little bit more salvageable. After this, I do go back, and you'll see in a moment, to kind of like adjust for any of the other future windows. I do make some cuts, some markings with the pencil and the ruler every so often to just make the windows themselves. And I'll go through this through all of them, as well as doing some battle damage. The battle damage the battle damage video, for some reason, got a little lost in the recording process. Hopefully I'm able to get that resolved for future videos. I'd rather you guys see what I'm doing than me going back and you just looking at it. But this definitely helped a lot more, having a little trace, and you can see I have all the windows done on each side, as well as the battle damage, just a couple holes poked there, and the things cut up. Now I'm just doing a little trimming to the edge, making sure everything's all good, as well as adding some more hot glue to make sure everything's attached to everything for it. Don't want anything, popping up mid-game. And that, we have the main structure done. Now we're going to move on to adding some more of the details to the actual terrain. Now, I added this to keep with the warpings, because I've had things warp before. This is cork. I got a roll of cork with an adhesive back to it. Just rolled out the top part, cut it off, kind of like ripped it apart so it looked a little bit more janky, and added to the top, and it looks really good. I also added a little bit more structure to it. Now for the bottom, I probably, in the future, I'll do this ahead of time. That way, I can actually get the bottom on properly. For the bottom itself right now, I'm just going to take some offcuts from the top and just some ripped up pieces and just add a bit like scatter almost. This will help with the warping by keeping things down, while also adding a little bit of like definition to the ground floor, making it look like, hey, it's been chewed up a little bit by damage. And as you can see, there's a little, different like height and levels there. Now I'm going to take some tacky glue. Personally, I would prefer Elmer's glue to tacky glue. I do use this itself too. But Elmer's glue would probably have been a little bit better, just a little easier to get everything there. Just going to put it everywhere on the top floor. I'm also going to do this at the bottom. And then I'll just take a brush and just make sure everything is just everywhere. This is where I was going to have an issue with the warping, mostly with the glue, just because I want to glue down some basing material, just to give it, so it's not just a flat definition across the board. Now that everything's glued on both sides, I'm going to take my handy dandy old old can of coffee and just put like a sand mixture I have in here. This is just some fine sand, some coarse sand, a little bit of pebbles and everything. I use this for my miniatures as well, and just pour some on there just to give it obviously definition for it, so it's not a flat thing. Now that everything's done, I put a couple off-cut chunks of foam on there as like rocks, and we're just going to base everything with a flat black. This is just apple barrel black. It's cheap. It's for basing, you don't really need anything high end for this type of stuff. I wouldn't use any of your model paints for it. So we're just going to take some just black paint, just with the paintbrush, go across and just kind of cover everything. Hindsight, I probably would have mixed a little bit of water in here just to make it flow easier, but overall it works fine, just to get everything coated. I do need to do 2 coats on everything just to make sure the pink comes up, and just make sure everything's all covered for our next step. But just gonna go through with a bunch of black just to cover everything for you. Now that everything is dried, we're going to go through and add some gray. It's okay if some stuff does show up a little brown. That's perfectly fine. It adds a little bit of definition for it. But we're going to add gray to everything so that, this is the main color for the tone. The black will shine through a little bit. That's fine. Adds the definition for it that it is an older building. It's been ruined. But the gray is going to be the predominant, color for everything. Going to go through for both floors, all the walls, inside supports, everything. And I have since taken out that one extra support that's down there because it was in the way. While everything's still a little wet, I am going to put in some light brown into the flooring part, just to add a little bit of, like I said, definition to things. That way it's just not all one static color. It's adding a little extra, like, oomph to it. But only for, like, the actual ground. The walls, I keep the same gray, just to keep that kind of uniform. It does get a little bit on there in some spots, but that's perfectly fine. It looks like, the ground just came up from, like, splatter of damage. We're going to do that to the top as well as to the bottom while the gray is still wet, so it blends in. Now that everything's dried now, you can see the definition of some of the black going through and the brown. We're going to put a quick black wash. We're just going to make a quick one over here with actually the dirty water from our painting brushes, so it adds that little extra color into there as well with the gray and the brown. This first one that I put in there, it is a little bit darker, and I'll actually, off camera, go through the spots where I hit it before with a little just wet brush to tone down it a bit. But I'm going to add some water as things go, just to make things a little bit more even, to get the right consistency I'm looking for with the pigmentation for it. I don't want it to be too dark. I don't want it to be too light. I kind of just want it to be, just to get into the recesses just enough without it kind of darkening everything down. And now that, after everything dried, here's the finished product. I put some of my blood ravens in there just to show you the scale of everything. Overall, I am very satisfied with this project. As the first kind of like main terrain thing I've built in years, it came out really, really well. There are a couple things I'll probably go back and do differently next time, like doing the first floor a bit more before I move on to the second. But overall, I am happy with this piece. I hope you guys liked it. If you guys end up, doing this, or there's anything you want me to do further on, we're going to be doing more terrain videos. And if you guys want to see me paint my blood ravens, I still have a bunch more to do for that full army. So let me know if you want to see that. And remember, guys, eyes up and keep rolling.